This is the first movement towards peace, I would argue, that we've seen since this war broke out. And hopefully what's going to happen here is exactly what President Trump said he was going to do, is get them both to the table and help them reach an agreement that can bring peace back to the region.
So there's Congressman Tom Emmer speaking on some of the goings on here as of late regarding the peace pursuit with the Trump administration. And I want to get directly to our guest. We're excited to welcome to the show Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, the Assistant to the President and a Special Presidential Envoy for Ukraine. General Kellogg, thank you so much for the time today. It's an honor to have you back.
Hey, Annie, good to be with you again. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you bet. I want to give you the opportunity to broadly, in whatever way you want our listeners to know, Donald Trump set out to restore peace between Ukraine and Russia for what he wanted to have done 2 months into his administration. How is the timeline? How is the plan going that the administration set forth to restore peace?
Yeah, Annie, I think actually when I was on a program right at the start of the administration, they said, where do you think this thing will go? And I said, well, I was hoping that we get to a ceasefire within the first 100 days. And I think we're approaching that. I think we've got a limited ceasefire. We want to go to a full ceasefire. Then you're building the peace talks. And we're at day 58 right now. And I think we started working this immediately. The president did. And he's been working hard. He's talked to President Zelensky. He's talked to President Putin just the other day, both in back-to-back calls. And I think now we've got everybody kind of situated where we want to go. What I mean by that is we're going to have what are called, I guess you'd call them proximity talks. That's the term they use, where a group sits in one room and another group sits in another room in Saudi Arabia this week coming up, between the Ukrainians and the Russians, where they sit down, you kind of get a baseline where everybody wants to go, what they need to do. Then you kind of try to negotiate and figure out, okay, how do we best come to an agreement on a full-up ceasefire? And we're going to be doing that with our teams, my teams, the National Security Council teams, and Secretary of State teams all together working that in Saudi Arabia. So I think we're about where I thought we'd be. As a matter of fact, I was looking at a timeline and just notionally put it together when I first took over, and I missed this what we're doing this weekend by 2 days. Oh. Just pure luck.
That's nice.
And so I said we're kind of on track to do that. And the only way we're getting there, honestly, Annie, and President Trump has said it. He said, this war wouldn't have started if he was president. He's absolutely right. But he's also the only president and the only person who can bring this war to a conclusion, because it's the only one that can work with both the Ukrainians and the Russians. And he's proven that. Mm-hmm. And he's been aggressively going after it, trying to stop the killing, it's horrific. I mean, I use the term industrial strength killing. When you've got over 100,000 soldiers on both sides dead and or wounded, those are just stunning numbers. I mean, the numbers of lost of Ukrainians alone. Our losses in the Vietnam War and the Korean War combined don't even come close.
Wow.
And the Soviets left Afghanistan up to losing 18,000. And we're talking probably they've lost conservatively, the Russians, 300,000 dead. The Ukrainians lost probably 120,000 dead. Those numbers are, stratospheric when you think about it.
Yeah.
And it's the loss of the material as well. So I think we're getting there. I feel very, very comfortable about it, very confident about it. I think the fact that people are talking is important. President Biden did not talk to Putin at all during the course of the war. And you've got to talk to your adversaries as well as your allies. And he didn't do that because that war went on. So I think we're in a pretty good position. We're in a better position, very candidly, Annie, than I thought we'd be even 2 weeks ago. So it's a good shot at it.
Yeah.
We're going to make a good shot at it.
We're speaking with General Keith Kellogg here on the Annie Frey Show, a very integral part of negotiating this peace between Russia and Ukraine on behalf of the Trump administration. The Zelensky Oval Office chaos that took place, my understanding is that you were in the room for that. Was that a major setback to the process?
Yeah, I'd call it very honestly a train wreck. It really was bad, and it was just about 3 weeks ago. Actually, it turned out to be something that actually worked. What I mean by worked is when President Zelensky came in, and we gave forewarned him about what not to do, and he actually did it. When he came in, I think thought he was dealing with a different individual. He thought he was dealing with a Joe Biden, not a Donald Trump. Big mistake on his part. So he was escorted out of the White House. And maybe there was supposed to be a lunch, didn't happen. There was supposed to be a press conference, didn't happen. And I think President Zelensky realized that he tried to play the wrong guy. And then we cut off, for a temporary way, we cut off aid, both military and intelligence aid. And I think everybody realized, ooh, you guys do support a lot. Yeah, we do. Yeah. So, excuse me. And so everybody reached out, let's get our things back in center and put it in balance, which he did. The president accepted a call of President Zelensky after he made a call to President Putin. And it was back online, because I tell you what happened 3 weeks ago was a disaster. In fact, the comment I made was, by his being escorted out of the White House and basically our cutting, or not cutting back, but pausing the aid, it was like hitting somebody upside the head with a 2x4, and it waters your eyes. And that's what we did. And I said, yeah, he just realized he was dealing with the wrong guy.
Yeah.
So everything got back into balance. The talk was good. It was a great call. Where we want to go. And people say, well, he talked to Putin for 2 hours, talked to Zelensky for an hour. Yeah, but Zelensky's was done in English and Putin's was translated. And you pick up about double your time when you translate. So it was about an equal call. And they talked basically everything there was to do and to happen in ending the Ukrainian-Russia war. So I think that actually helped us. At the time, it didn't look like it, but it actually got everybody to understand, especially the Ukrainians, that dealing with Donald J. Trump is much different than dealing with President Joe R. Biden.
Yeah, I think that was evident. That I watched that as it was being covered, of course, in the media, and then we replayed it, the exchange here on our show, because it was just something to behold. But the thing that really struck me is President Trump's resolve and his clear focus on who he is there to serve. And of course you want Russia and Ukraine to stop killing each other. You want the war to stop for a whole host of reasons. But Donald Trump clearly represents in his position the American people. You've seen him in the first term. Now you're seeing him work these foreign policies in the second term. Is there any difference over the course of time that has passed in the way he handles these things?
Oh yeah, it's huge. It's massive. But that's, the circumstances are much, much different. When we first came in on the first administration, they were talking about impeaching President Trump before he was even inaugurated in the first term. And we were under constant attack, be it the Mueller investigation or impeachment trials. And I think what happened, this is going to sound crazy, but I think that 4-year gap was enormous, because it had a chance for President Trump to sit back, reflect on what happened the first time, not going to make the same errors, the same mistakes, what happened, what was bad, what was good. And I think he did that. He put a great team around him, has a great team around him. He realized what he wanted to do and where he wanted to go. And when it came to national security, he realized that he could really, as we would say, press the envelope, and he's done. But look what's happened. I'll give you just one example. I mean, in his first administration, on day one, he signed one executive order. This time, he signed over 50 on his first day. So we were ready for it. We knew we were going to flood the zone, push hard, right at the very start. And the same with international relations. He said there was one way to basically control international relations, and that's the power of the presidency, much more than I think he really appreciated. Look, the fact is, there's no book out there called Presidents for Dummies, meaning, you learn on the job. There's no book that really tells you what you do. And I think he learned under pressure, very much so, from his first administration. And he came into this administration right out of the blocks, full speed. And, somebody the other day looked at me and said, today's 58, but he said a couple of days ago, he said, God, it's been 56 days. It feels like 56 years. And I said, welcome, because that's Trump time.
Yeah.
And he demands a lot. He works a lot, works hard, and he expects people to do the same. And he's doing it for the American people. When you think about Ukraine, the American people are giving Ukraine $171 billion of taxpayer money. We've had 45 presidential drawdowns of military equipment. We've done a lot. This nation's done a lot for Ukraine. And part of that is we look at the Europeans and say, okay, this is in your backyard. You guys need to step up. You need to support Ukraine, to your full capacity, which a lot of you have not done. So the American people have done a lot for Ukraine. And when now you have a president who says, okay, there's a quid pro quo here, and what's already done for America and our citizens, and the use of our taxpayers' money. Uh, where's the balance? And I give him credit for that.
Yeah, you have to have a spine to be able to do that, of course, and to do it in the midst of a political climate, a media climate that often wants to try to tear him down, and even with fabricated stories. You're talking about the investment that the American taxpayer, this country, has made in Ukraine. Of course, we know of the minerals deal and the intent to have had that sign at that meeting before. What will America get out of this deal? What kind of investment, return on investment, will they be able to see if everything goes according to plan?
Well, I think what you're going to see, the overall picture is going to be you're going to have balance in the region, so it's going to be stable, and it's a chance to kind of break apart that axis of adversaries when you've got North Korea, you've got China, you've got Iran, and you've got Russia all together. We didn't see that 4 years ago. They were all kind of kept apart. I think you're going to bring Europeans more into the fold, meaning they're going to have to rely more on themselves for their security in Europe, which is going to be good. It allows us to, actually save taxpayers money and relocate assets and effort in a global look, be it at the Middle East or be it the Far East as well. So I think it's just bringing the world back into a sense of balance, which is not in a sense of balance right now, because a lot of people, you heard the term freeloading. Well, it's people basically saying, we want you to be in the fight. We're going to hold your coat. No, you're not. You have to take some responsibilities as well. I go back to what a really good professor, a guy by the name of Paul Kennedy, he teaches up at Yale, still teaches the course. And the book he uses is The Rise and Fall of the Great Powers from 1500 till today. And I'll give you the bottom line of the book so nobody has to go buy it. Mm-hmm. Bottom line, he says, great powers fail because of strategic overreach. And that means you basically fill other people's potholes before you fill your own. That's not going to happen with President Trump. He's going to rely on the American people, and we're going to support the American people first. And then we'll see where everything else goes from there. And every nation has a responsibility for their own sovereignty and to support their own people. And we're doing that right now. So I think in that regard, you're going to see a much more balanced approach to national security. I think it's going to be a good approach. It also protects the American people much more than before. The American people, when they pay their taxes, and you're starting to see that with Doge and other things, that they're just not, it's not going to be squandered away. When you add $1 trillion and $1 trillion together, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen now.
Yeah. Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg with us right now. Last question before we let you go. Also, in the investment that the United States has made into Ukraine, my understanding is that Russia is not as strong as they may have been at the beginning of this war, that they've had to invest a lot of their economic strength and also their manpower into fighting this war. Is that also part of the equation?
Well, yeah, it is. And look, the Russians are hurting badly as well. I mean, they don't like to talk about it, but they are. We put pretty good sanctions on them. The way I look at it is sort of like a cage fight where one of the fighters taps out after he's losing the fight. This is a chance where both fighters in the ring, the Russians, Ukrainians, want to tap out, and they're looking for the referee, and Donald J. Trump's the referee. And I think it's actually going to be good for everybody, and I think that's going to be pretty important as we go down the line. I think that's what I say about bringing balance back to the globe. But bottom line, President Trump looks at the American people first and protects them first. And that's not bad. That's a good idea. But it doesn't mean America is necessarily alone. But it does mean we're going to take care of our own people first, because other nations are doing the same thing. And I hate to say that, it sounds going to sound pretty harsh, but a lot of the American people, a lot of the money that the American people have given has been going to other places besides the United States of America. And that shouldn't be happening. But again, it's going to be a level of balance, and I think that's what you want to have. That's good foreign policy dictates that you have balance in your approaches to other nations.
Yeah. Well, it's very apparent. Such a dramatic change, like you said, 56 days feels like 56 years on the Trump time scale, and we're grateful for your time today and sharing some of your inside view on that. Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, thank you for being with us today. Such an honor to speak with you.
Thanks, Annie. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Bye-bye. All right. I love talking to General Kellogg. He's the man in the room. His job is to be the presidential envoy for the Ukraine Russian conflict and to help solve it.